Hello and good morning and welcome to Special Brew. What Special Brew? Because it is on holiday. And welcome to Morning Brew. And it is Friday. It's Friday. Oh my God, I'm losing track of days here. It's Friday, the 4th of July, August. Start again, shall we? I hope you can hear me. Hope you can see me. Welcome. To Morning Brew. It is Monday, the 4th of August, 2023. Monday? Did I say Monday? Oh, mate, I'm going back to bed. Can we just cancel the book? It's Friday, the 4th of August, 2023, which you all know because you're here. Yes, I am running late. I had a few problems with the mic before I started, and obviously I'm having problems with my internet because it's dropping out. I've already dropped it. 355 frames since I started this a moment ago. Oh, my God. You're late, Graham. No coffee for you. Yes, I know. It's the story of my life. Sorry about the dodgy internet, and apparently my audio is a bit low. I don't actually know if there's anything I can do about that. Let me have a look. I can give it a boost. Should I try and give it a boost? Should I try and... Hello. I hope this doesn't get too loud. I'm going to put it up by 3 decibels. Okay, right. Can you hear me now? Is that better? Hey, what's with the funny accent, Phil? Bit of a late one last night, Graham. No, actually. I'm on a family holiday, so none of those shenanigans, unfortunately. It was curtains for the PM at his house yesterday. Well, let's get into it, shall we? So, the 2 things I want to talk about, I know Phil did a video about this yesterday. First of all, we are dropping the idea of reviving the British standards kite. We were going to bring in this new system, which was going to be called the UKCA mark, and yeah, we've decided to get rid of that. We're not going to have it anymore because we're just going to stick to European standards, which we do not have any say over anymore. We used to have a veto. We used to have a very powerful voice in the EU. We were one of the 3 senior members of the EU, but now nothing. Just checking the chat. Yes, much better, Graham. It's better. Good. Hope I'm not too echoey either. I changed the mic settings, so hopefully I'm not too echoey. Lol, plumbed up. I just want a big shout out to everyone in the chat there. We've got Sam, we've got William, we've got Rob, we've got Katrina and plumbed off, and we've got Admiral Pegasus. Many more. If you want to join us in the chat, feel free. You have to subscribe in order to chat. So if you're wondering why you can't chat, other people can, it's because you're not subscribed. So subscribe, wait a minute, you should be able to write what you like to some extent. If I don't like what you've written, I reserve the right to ban you from the page. Well, commenting anyway, you can still watch the video. In impotent fury, as you can't comment. No UKCA, but Merc crowns on pint glasses. We could put crowns on pint glasses anyway. It made no difference. Like, we could do that stuff. We could sell stuff in pounds and ounces. We always could. There was never a point where we couldn't sell stuff in pounds and ounces. The rule was it also had to be in metric, so it could be sold anywhere in the EU. Anything made in the UK, the idea was that you could sell it anywhere in the EU. It could be moved to anywhere in the EU and sold. That's the way it used to be before they brought in all this Brexit red tape, which apparently could wrap around the world 3 times. So basically, the amount of suffering that these companies have gone through, these British companies, over the last 7 years since the Brexit vote is just, it's on a different scale. It really is. If you want to impose economic sanctions on your own country, you must be mad. I'm sorry to use language like that, but and I know that I'm not supposed to use language concerning mental health, but seriously, you have to be bonkers. I can't just get stressed this enough to actually want this for your country, and rather than want it for a country that you don't like we want it for Russia. We want economic sanctions for Russia because they've been a very naughty country and they've gone and invaded Ukraine and they're interfering all over Africa and the Middle East, and that's our job, obviously. And I'm sorry, but you don't do that kind of thing to yourself. It's like burning down your house because you didn't like the colour of a rug. And you're like, we've just got a new rug, you know. No, we've got to burn down the entire house. And this comes hot on the heels of earlier this week when we had the 5th delay on, Phytosanitary phytosanitary checks. I'm saying that wrong probably. Anyway, the checks on fresh fruits, fresh goods leaving the UK, and also like leather goods and also wood, anything made of wood, now has to be checked as it leaves the UK into the EU. And those checks have been going on since we Brexited. However, we're not checking the stuff coming in because we can't afford to. It will push up inflation. It will push up the price of food. And Jacob Rees-Mogg, the voice of Brexit himself, the sad, deluded, half-speed voice of Brexit himself, he said last year that it would be economic suicide to do that. And he's absolutely right. It would be sanitary and phytosanitary, says William, for getting me there. Not mad, traitors. Yeah, you've got to be a traitor. That's a very good point, actually, Vendetta. I like that. Yeah, you have to be a traitori, in order to carry out this kind of wanton act of self-harm. This is what it is. It's a monumental act of self-harm foisted on us by the oligarchy. Oligarchy, yeah, which is ruled by the rich, which is what we have in this country. Everyone who leads every political party pretty much in the country is rich, was born rich. The Prime Minister is worth over £700 million. They're all rich. All the people who dictate what you do in your life, where you can work, how you can work, the hours that you work, the amount you get paid, they're all rich. The people who make all the decisions about the environment and where we're going with that are all rich. Now, I went off on one on Wednesday about Rishi Sunak granting these massive concessions to oil giants and gas giants from around the world to drill our gas and our oil and then sell it on the international market. If he said, okay, well, all of this is going to be used for Britain, I'm going to store it for the future, or I don't know. You could think of some way that he could spin it so it sounded great. But the reality is this: he has given away our oil to companies from like the UAE and Norway and other places, and they get to drill our oil, and they only have to sell a small percentage back to us at international prices. We don't even get a discount. The vast majority of that oil and gas will be frittered away off to the ends of the earth. And the excuse that they came up with was just bizarre. They said, well, if we don't get on our own, then we'll have to import it from around the world, and that will be bad for, like, oil miles or something. And I'm just sitting there going, oh my God, is that the best they can come up with? So we've got to drill this oil. That's not going to supply our needs because most of it is going to be exported to other countries at the profits of other shareholders. Because otherwise it would be worse for the environment, really, if you think about it. It reminds me, I don't know if you ever remember Bill Hicks. He was a comedian in the 1990s, very funny, big influence on Dennis Leary, who stole half his material. But that's another point. He went on a lot about smoking and cancer and how funny it was that, people who don't smoke die every day of cancer. And then he proceeded to die of cancer. He's 20s or early 30s, I think he was very young. Was he born in 62? Was it? Yeah, he would have been about 31, 32 when he died. Anyway, the point being, he did a whole thing about how if you watch the tape of the Rodney King incident when a black man was famously beaten up by the cops in America, they tried to spin it. They tried to spin this incident that was caught on videotape of these cops needlessly beating a black man at the side of the road for no reason. And he said, well, if you play the tape backwards, they're actually helping him up. And I thought, oh my God, that's brilliant. That is exactly how spin works. It's like, look at this thing that's awful. Isn't that awful? Well, actually, it's not as awful as you think. It could be awfuler. And also, what about these other awful things that are happening, eh? What about them? But this all ties together with this bizarre British, I should say actually English, exceptionalism that we're somehow superior and the rules don't apply to us, and this sort of post-empire mindset that we've got ourselves into. And it's just encapsulated so well in the failure of Brexit, the failure to negotiate a decent deal to get us out of the EU. The fact that we decided to do that in the first place, again, I've said this a million times already, but 13 years ago, people didn't care about the EU. It was one of the least cared about subjects when people asked in the British attitude surveys and things like that. What do you care about? They said the NHS, they said their jobs, they said their pensions, they said their children's schooling, they said the road, the infrastructure, they said anything but the EU. No one cared about it. It was 1% of the population put down that the EU was one of the 5 most important issues facing Britain in 2010. And then just a few years later, because the rich decided, the oligarchy decided that we should care about this a lot, like they're doing with trans people now. You know, they're going, oh, you should really care about trans people. No one gave a second thought about trans people 13 years ago. It wasn't an issue. It wasn't a wedge issue. It wasn't something that people were like, oh my God, we need to do something about these people who are using the wrong bathroom, I think. I don't know. I don't know how this works. And getting these people who have got no vested interest whatsoever in the trans community or trans people having the same decent rights as others, suddenly getting very vexed about, I don't know, a weightlifter from New Zealand who's not very good and was born male, allocated male at birth. Yeah, and they're stopping other people from getting into the sport. These same people don't even make a peep about the rich, the born rich, the privately educated, in our country, essentially riding roughshod over any aspirations for the rest of us or staties to get into any jobs in the media, in politics, in elite sports. Yeah, good luck looking for someone with a yacht who grew up on a council estate in Brew. It's just not going to happen. No, but suddenly this becomes a wedge issue. Nobody cared about the EU, but we were told that we had to care about it. At the same time, they're telling us that we shouldn't care about the environment. It's not a bother. Andrew Neil said that 1.5 degree of warming is not going to kill anyone. He's so wrong. It's literally going to kill millions, if not billions of people in the long run, because you're not just talking about a room heating up by 1.5 degrees. You're talking about the entire planet, and it's a big planet, and it's the energy equivalent of over 25 billion nuclear bombs, which are a point which I will pound into people until they take it in. God damn it! Big shout out to Jez Hunt there for the £1 super chat. Thank you very much, Jez. There. I know you know how we're exporting 80% of oil. What about the emissions from those tankers? They think we're thick, says Gardy. Yeah, exactly. But we're not supposed to care about that. They decide, the rich, the privileged, the oligarchy, the ruling classes of this country decide what we should care about. They decide that we shouldn't care about the environment. We shouldn't care that the Tories have a ban on onshore wind farms. But what we should care about is trans people and our membership of the EU. That was a big thing. It was a big thing that was really, really important, that we have our own standards. And the mad thing is, these companies that have already been, like, you know, buffeted by the winds of Brexit to major degrees. I mean, a lot of small to medium enterprises have actually folded, closed down because they can't export anymore, because there's no big area close by with lots of rich people in it, apart from Europe. That's the big area nearby with lots of rich people in it. There's a big area to the south of that called Africa, and there's lots of poor people there who can't afford our stuff, unfortunately. I mean, it'd be great if we lived in a world where they could afford our stuff, and maybe if Africa was incredibly rich and the Sahara Desert, I don't know, didn't exist, and it was really easy to get stuff to South Africa and other countries in Africa, yeah, maybe Brexit could work, but it can't, because they're really poor countries. And even the countries in the Middle East where you think, oh, yeah, they've got loads of money, haven't they? They're like $500,000 per capita or something. It's ridiculous. Yeah, because they've got small indigenous populations. Most of the people who live in, like, Qatar or the UAE are not actually from Qatar or the UAE and do not have rights as citizens in that respect. So yeah, bit of a problem because they can't afford what we're selling. I know the mega rich can, but there's not that many mega rich people. Although their riches are getting bigger every day. But there's only so much artisanal jam that they can eat. They can jam into their face. Sam in there with a £10 super chat. Thank you very much, Sam. As eco-protesters occupy the roof of PM's family home, so they've covered the Prime Minister's family home in black material. What a humiliating symbol of our supine tolerance of a tiny self-obsessed bunch of zealots who disrupt everyday life with impunity. What, you mean like the Tory party? Waka, waka, waka. What, you mean like people who write for the Daily Mail? Waka, waka, waka. Johnny Copperhead, £5 super chat, thank you very much. Hang on, Graham, are you saying the rich are self-serving goons? No, surely not. That's exactly what I'm saying, my friend. That is exactly what I am saying. Things are going to get worse. All we can do is slow it down. That's from Simon. Yeah. I mean, we're living in a very difficult time, really. We have the worst people in charge, the worst possible people in charge at the worst possible time. Could you imagine having a worldwide pandemic and having Trump in charge of America and Boris Johnson in charge of the UK? I mean, please. It's like, well, I suppose actually it's a lot like when we had World War II and Neville Chamberlain was in charge. You thought he could appease Hitler because he was an idiot. Couldn't appease Hitler because Hitler was a lunatic. He was a fascist lunatic. But now we were like, oh yeah, fascist lunatics, they're great. So talking of fascist lunatics, Donald Trump yesterday actually had to go to court and have his charges read against him. Yeah. 4 charges, and do you know what? He is banged to rights on all of them. If they had tried to get him for inciting the insurrection or being an insurrectionist, I think they could have muddied the water there. But what they're doing is they're saying, actually, these are the 4 things that you did that were illegal: interfering in an election, trying to block the correct counting of election, intimidating people involved in the election. Stuff that there's proof. There's a lot of proof that he's done this. And Trump's defense is the First Amendment. Now, let me make this really clear, because some British people struggle with this, and I want you, smart people who watch this, to say this to them when they talk about free speech, right? First of all, free speech is an American thing. It's not a British thing. We don't have free speech in this country. You are only allowed to say what you're not allowed to say, if you see what I mean. So there's certain things that you are not allowed to say, maybe libelous or slanderous, or maybe it's a state secret or something like that. It's got diagnosis slammed on it. In Parliament, you can say what you like. Up to a point, you can actually say something that would be libelous anywhere else. You can't be done for slander. You can't be done for libel in a court of law. In the court of law. In a court of law. If you said it in Parliament, however, you can't call someone a liar, even if they are blatantly a liar. And you can't call someone by their actual name. You have to call them the representative, the Right Honourable MP representative for, I don't know, Knowsley South or whatever their constituency is. Weird, but there you go. So it's an American thing. Next thing, it only applies to the government and the law. Okay, so you don't have a right, even in America, even if you're American, to go into a university and say what you like. In the same way that I don't have a right to go to your house with, a spiel. I've written all this stuff down on this paper here, and I'm gonna inject it at you. That sounds wrong, doesn't it? In your house, in your living room, about what a terrible person you are. I don't have any right to do that. First of all, it'd be trespassing, but secondly, a landlady of a pub has a right to bar people from that pub. If they go in and start spouting racist bollocks, the person in charge of the pub, whose land they are on, a building they are in, can bar them from it. You can be barred from anywhere. Private property. Have a look around London, how many private gardens there are in the middle of a square of houses where they say, oh, no, there's a private garden for the people who live in this particular area. You can't climb over that fence and go, free speech, I'm exercising free speech here. It's just for the government, and it doesn't cover everything, okay? So you can say, for instance, that you think the election was rigged. That's fine. That's protected by free speech, by the First Amendment. You can't be put on trial for doing that. However, if you tell someone that you want them to cheat in the election, like you call up the governor of Georgia and ask them to find 11,000 votes, which is the exact number that you need in order to win, that's against the law. You can't just say, well, I only said it, I didn't actually do it. In the same way, and this is the example that was given, that Tony Soprano, if he tells one of his goons to whack someone, That's still a conspiracy to murder. That he can't get away with it by going, well, I only said it. Didn't, you know, I didn't actually do the crime. I just told someone to do the crime. You know, these things have come up in law before over the last hundreds of years. And yeah, I don't think that's a great defense. And I hope, fingers crossed, that is the defense that Trump calls on, because it'll lose. It will lose. And I can't see a jury in Washington putting up with that. Now, one of the madder things about the American system, which has been tested to its limits by Trump in the same way that Boris Johnson tested the British democratic system to its limits, and yeah, democratic in inverted commas, obviously. You're seeing now that there is a big problem in having no rule about the competence and criminal past or criminal future of someone running for president. The framers didn't envisage someone who was a career criminal like Trump running for high office and winning. They thought more of the people. They thought, oh, the people won't vote for them, they're a criminal. Unfortunately, people like to romanticize gangsters. They've done this for a long time. You know, look at the success of The Godfather and Goodfellas and Casino. Constant gangster films about how cool it is to be a gangster. Isn't it cool to be a gangster till you get whacked? And yeah, people have this sort of reverence for gangsters in the way that the poor of Colombia had reverence for Pablo Escobar. It's a bit embarrassing. It's a bit like, really, this is who you look up to? Someone who's absolutely brutal, a psychopath who kills in order to get what they want, who stole their money. Yeah, but at least they never killed their own or something. Or they only killed their own. I mean, come on, please. Someone who deals drugs for a living and kills people who infringe on their territory, that's not an honourable way of making a living. Being a gangster is not honourable. It's horrible. And the people caught in the crossfire, the innocent people, well, you know, the gangs are just killing their own, are legion. So I kind of like understand it from a distance in a kind of empathetic kind of way, but I can't quite get my head around why people hero worship gangsters like Trump, and also why they write letters to serial killers in jail asking to marry them. Okay, right. Oh, it's a bit weird. It's a bit weird. But the love that people have for Trump in America is mirrored by the love that people have for Boris Johnson still in the UK. And you've still got people in Uxbridge who were being interviewed before that recent by-election who were like, oh, I just want Boris back. I just miss him so much. I just want him back. Even though he presided over the deaths of over 200,000 Brits during the COVID crisis, which we could have handled so much better. Something that isn't kept in hindsight, because we said it at the time. I made copious videos at the time saying, why is the government handling this so badly? And it's because they're idiots. That's right, incompetent idiots, and they're the people in charge. John says Chamberlain allowed more Spitfires, etc., to be built. We were close to losing during the Battle of Britain. It's debatable whether we could have done anything had gone to war in 38. Yeah, I've heard that argument before, that he gave us time to build up our defences, and at the time we weren't allowed to build bombers because of the rules in place. You know, you couldn't build up things that would blow up or things, but Spitfires were seen as another fighter planes, and jets. Fighter planes were seen as defensive because they were just taking out other planes that were coming towards you, so it was a defensive posture rather than an aggressive posture. But don't forget, the war was supposed to start in 1939 and didn't actually start till 1940. We had the Phony War for many months before it actually kicked in, so that might still be the case. I don't know, but yeah, it's easy to sort of look back on history and go, oh well, this could have happened, that could have happened. But there were people at the time, like Hitler, like Churchill, saying Hitler is baddie. You know, we can't trust him. Let's not do a deal with him. And maybe if Britain had come down harder on Hitler, he wouldn't have been granted half of Czechoslovakia by Neville Chamberlain in order to ensure peace in our time. Bit of a misstep, that one. Johnny Copperhead, £2 super chat. Thank you very much, Johnny. Trump is a cult, a complete cult, I think, yes. think the spell checkers causing problems there. Crime always bleeds out their own turf. There's still pubs in Newcastle where if you say the wrong thing to the wrong person, you can expect some nasty people to pop in. That's from Scott. Oh, God. That's not great, is it? But yeah, Precozen wants to start World War III, says Vendetta. Yes, yeah, the guy's a psychopath. He kills people with sledgehammers. I mean, the guy's out and out psycho. Precozen he's the leader of the Wagner group in Russia, or in Belarus, one of the two. I don't know where he is at the moment, but he is a nasty, nasty piece of work. And it isn't interesting that, like, compared with Prigozhin, like, Putin seems like the sensible one, which is like compared with Trump, Bush Jr. seems like the sensible one. It's like, well, he wasn't as bad as Trump. It's like, he's pretty bad, though. Pretty bad. Alan says, one of the saddest lessons of history is this. If we've been bamboozled enough, we tend to reject any evidence of the bamboozle. We're no longer interested in finding out the truth. I think that's a quote by Carl Sagan. I think, is it, Alan? Let me know in the chat. But yeah, very, very true. And now we're in the situation where, just to wrap up, because I've only got 5 minutes left, I'll go on a little bit longer today, because obviously I was a bit late starting. We started talking about the fact that we've done this new CE mark, this British CE mark, which is going to be the UKCA mark. And let's talk a little bit about the history of standards. The British safety kite, or British standard kite, was something that we grew up with in my generation. You saw it on the windows of cars. The glass had the little kite mark on, and if you bought an electrical product, it had this little kite mark on. It was like a little triangle with a B on top and an S in the middle of British standards. And a lot of those British standards were incorporated into the EU to make, or the European communities it was at the time, to make the CE mark, which stands for Conformité Européenne. Basically, it's things that conform to European standards. Now, that standard has gone on to be the standard of the world. So if you want to trace Britain's influence on the world and you want to feel good about a good thing that Britain did, arguably, along with bringing in the European Human Rights, the Convention of Human Rights and the Court, which we want to leave now for some reason, we brought in the idea of having these standards. We pushed for the highest possible standards that we could at the time, as far as I'm aware. And as a result of that, now every country in the world that exports expects those CE marks to be stamped on their things. You get countries like Brazil, which is obviously not part of Europe, but they mandate that any imports coming in must have the CE mark on, must be up to European standards, and therefore it can be sold in Brazil. A lot of other countries just go, yeah, okay, well, that's the standard that we want. If we don't want substandard products that burst into flames and then just end up with the importers getting sued for selling them on. So yeah, you get it. And this is why now the European standards has been adopted all over the world. So for Britain to have its own standards was absolutely bonkers. I mean, like, first of all, there was no intention of deviating, making them, conforming to higher standards, and there was no option about conforming to lower standards, because then they couldn't be exported pretty much anywhere, except for poor countries that couldn't afford to buy the stuff that we were exporting. So, problem. Do you see that little thing there? So they were going to be exactly the same as the CE mark, right? So there was literally no point in this. All it was Brexit ideology. That's what it was. Tory Brexit ideology. We want to go our own way. We want to have our own marks. Slapped on anything. But it wasn't just going to affect British manufacturers and British makers of stuff who would have to get in someone from, pay someone to come and check the goods and say, yeah, these goods are up to standard. I picked up a book there. I think books get a CE mark. But if I had a little machine to hold up, there you go. Look, there you go. There's a little power generator thing here. This charges my battery for my light. And on the back, you've got the little C mark there. You can see it. CE. That's probably made in China. Where is it made? Yeah, this is made. It says made in China. It's made in China, And they make sure that they are inspected. They can put the CE mark on. And if they put a CE mark on something that shouldn't have it on there, the company that produced it can face quite heavy penalties for doing so. And that system is already there. It exists, and we were like, no, we're going to duplicate that system and make British manufacturers put another stamp on it on top of the CE mark that they would still need anyway if they hope to export the goods anywhere but Britain. So if you had like a British only good that you are only planning to sell in Britain, you could just get away with having a British conformity stamp on it. But what's the point? You've already got the system set up for getting the CE stamp. If your manufacturing process has already got a CE stamp, you're paying extra, you're doubling up your costs by getting this UKCA stamp, which is ridiculous. But it gets even madder because any company in China or Japan or the shiny new trade agreements that we've got with New Zealand and Australia or anywhere in the EU, they would have to get a UKCA stamp to sell their product in the UK. So we were going to go to Guangzhou in China and go to factories and say, right, that you need to employ this person to come in with a clipboard and make sure that it's all UK standards before you bring it to the UK. And like everyone's looking at this going, that's just what? Why? What? Just more red tape for absolutely no reason whatsoever. And also, I mean, rules of origin. I've got to do a whole video on rules of origin. They're myriad. They're like, before, if you sold something in the EU that was made in the UK, when we were part of the EU, you could sell it like you were selling it from Liverpool to Manchester. No difference. But now you have to account for every single nut and bolt that makes up what you make. And if a certain percentage isn't reached made in the UK, then you have to declare that. And the tariffs might be different depending on where it originally came from. It's a system that worked for us when we were in the EU and now works against us now we're out of the EU. And that brings me on to the second part of this, which is the phytosanitary checks going out. So that's on goods going out of the country. Those checks exist, everything going out. People, producers, companies that export any kind of edible goods pretty much have to go through these checks. If you're exporting meat, you have to have a vet come and check it all out, and you have to get the certificates. Obviously, it costs a lot of money. Beforehand, we didn't have these things. We just didn't have them. You could feed a cow, maybe not a cow because BSE, but you could have an animal and then a pig, and you could butcher it and then sell it to meat anywhere in the EU. Pretty straightforward. In the same way that you could sell it around the UK. Obviously, there were checks along the way, but nothing so onerous as having to have its own building built in Dover for you to drive into with your truck and have everything checked out on the way out. So, on the way in, sorry. So the French, they built these things, to accommodate the fact that they would now have to check everything coming in from the UK or produce coming in from the UK pretty much. And we didn't, because we knew it would drive up prices. We knew it would drive up inflation. We knew it would drive up food prices. So we didn't. And we've delayed it and delayed it and delayed it. And now it's the fifth delay. It's supposed to come in October, and now it's going to be delayed until 2024. Possibly, I don't know, the day before the election. The Tories aren't going to bring these checks in. But this has got a two-edged effect. One of which is, first of all, it's really bad for British farmers. When you imagine you're a British farmer who exports half of your meat to the EU, you're a lamb farmer. Half of your meat goes to the EU at the moment, right? Now half your meat costs twice as much to buy in the EU than it used to because of all the checks that have to be done, and then you have to pass that on to your customer. Not only that, but there's a sheep farmer in Normandy who can bring their sheep into our country without any checks whatsoever. So who's got the cheaper lamb? Is it going to be the guy in Normandy, or is it going to be the guy in Wales? It's going to be the guy in Normandy. Simple as that. And so the lamb that we eat in this country, or the beef or the pork or whatever meat it is, let's all split hairs, it's now cheaper to make on the continent and bring over here than it is to make here and then sell to the continent, which is destroying British farming. More so than everything else that's going on at the moment, which includes climate change and the lack of nitrates. And this is a huge problem with fertilizer. We're running out of fertilizer. Can't stress this enough. It's a big problem that we're heading towards full pelts, like nobody's business. I was running towards this big problem that's coming up very, 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 very soon, which could see crop yields halve, like literally overnight, halve. So just imagine we've got enough food in the world at the moment for 10 billion people. You halve that, and we've only got enough food for 5 billion people. There are 8 billion people on the planet. That means 3 billion people, on top of the people who are going hungry anyway, but 3 billion people are going to go hungry at the moment. Okay, so farming has huge issues going on anyway, from the droughts we've been having, from the flooding we've been having, all this kind of stuff. And then on top of that, we've been Brexited. And a lot of farmers supported Brexit. I know some farmers who are very, very angry that farmers were seen as supporting Brexit. But at the time, I remember driving down to, being driven actually, down to Glastonbury, and just seeing so many farmers' fields on the way with signs in saying, vote Brexit, vote leave, vote leave, vote leave. And I was like, oh God, do we know what's going to happen to them? On my way to Glastonbury, I remember this in 2016, June 2016, 23rd of June, was it? I just voted, I got to Manchester, met with my friend in Manchester, we drove down, and I remember we were on the motorway and there was a DHL van in front of us with vote Brexit written in the muck on the back, in the dirt on the back of the van. I'll never forget it. I'm like, turned to my friend and went, DHL is a German company. Anyway, right, moving swiftly on. My dream is that Starmer brings in the investigation stroke regulation of the offshore banking industry, which is the reason the oligarchy creating backing Brexit. Yes, I mean, big thing was that there was going to be new directives brought in, new tax directives in the EU. It was a major player in the fact that the oligarchy decided at that point to ramp up support for Brexit. And when I say oligarchy, I mean the rich. Literally every single, pretty much, maybe there's like a handful of exceptions, but all the main drivers of Brexit came from money. All of them. They didn't have the same upbringing as you or I. They had like pony lessons and went on daddy's yacht and all that kind of stuff. It was, yeah. Alex says that is what is unforgivable. Not that people had very little political acumen, but they had such poor grasp of their own industry. Yeah. Well, I suppose DHL's probably done quite well out of Brexit, because now we have to pay to bring anything in from the EU when we didn't have to pay for it before, and they'll take a cut of any customs duties, obviously, because they can. And also because it's time for them. If they've got a courier driver and they're coming across from the continent, from the main continent, and to our little island, and they're having to stop and have everything checked, time is money. So that cost gets passed on to us. And obviously they'll take a little cream off the top, because that's how capitalism works. Forget the food, Graham. It's water that'll be the problem. Most fresh water is in lake and aquifers, which will be flooded with seawater, and the rest will evaporate. That's a very good point, Mike. Very, very, very good point, and very, very worrying. Only 1% of the world's water is fresh water. It's not that much, and we just kind of take it for granted when we really, really shouldn't. And yeah, we can hopefully rely to some extent on water storage tanks on every house, but that's going to get difficult. Think of the logistics of, if you've got a semi-detached house, yeah, you can probably fit a water tank, collect water off your roof, and you can drink that, okay? It goes into your gutters that you have to clean out regularly, because you don't want to get them full of leaves and things that will put microbes and bacteria in the water. But you know, you can drink the water from your roof. You can filter it as best you can, I guess. Maybe add some fluoride. But yeah, the point being is that yeah, when you think about people who live in terraces or people who live in apartment blocks, block of flats, how are you going to get enough water? You've got a block of flats. You go at the top. That's going to collect the water, is it? For all the people who live in there, it's only this much. And then what, you're going to keep it in a tank? It's going to be on top. It's going to give all the water to the people in. Everyone's going to be on a water meter. Everyone's going to be like, oh, can't have a shower today. Not enough water. Want a cup of tea? No, sorry, can't. Not enough water. I mean, it's a nightmarish situation where British people can't afford to have a cup of tea. That's the way we're going at the moment. Full tilt. You know, with the on our horse with a sticker, little pointy bit at the end of it, and you know, ahead of us, running towards that windmill, or that wind turbine, that onshore wind turbine that shouldn't be there because it spoils the view, according to every Tory voter in the country. Anyway, right, I can see that my signal is not doing so well. I'm really, really sorry about that. I will be back on Monday, God willing. And I might try and do a show over the weekend, because obviously while I've been away, I've not been able to do any moments of truth or anything like that. And hats off to Phil this week for doing 3 shows instead of the normal 2. And, you know, because he's just awesome. And before I go, I want to just mention again that Phil and I are going to be joined by Phytosanitary and Femi in Liverpool on October the 9th for the Labour Social, which is going to be held at Camp of Furnace at the same time as the Labour Conference. We are doing a talk in the conference, so if you're going to the conference, please come to that. But this is going to be a fringe event. It's going to be open to anyone. But if you are a subscriber to this, not subscriber, if you are a member of this channel, or you're a patron of mine or of Labour Socials, or of Phil's, by the way, then you will get in for free. So, yeah, please join us for that, or make a date in your diary. Monday, the 9th of October. And if you're not already a patron or a member of this channel, please consider it, because it helps us make this stuff. And we could do with all the help we can get at the moment, because obviously cost of living doesn't just affect everyone. Oh, it does. Obviously. Will you be covering the Bloomberg article from Wednesday on Drax, corruption of the highest order? Yeah, I'll have a look at that. Do you know what? I came across that. This is to do with Richard Drax, is it? Who owns like a massive plantation in St. Lucia. Is that the same guy? And he's a Tory MP, and his family have owned slaves for generations, and he's just horrible. And actually, Bond villain named after him. I think his grandfather or something went to school with Ian Fleming. He liked to name his characters after people he didn't like. So there was a kid called Blofeld in his school. That's where we got Blofeld from. And Auric Goldfinger actually comes from an architect called Goldfinger, who he hated because it was brutalist, horrible stuff that he built. Kind of fair enough, really. You know, Centre Point on Tottenham Court Road? Yeah, that was one of Goldfinger's. Yeah, so he took that name and he went, evil character. I think he did the same with Drax with Moonraker. Was Moonraker the baddie in Drax? No, it was Drax the baddie in Moonraker. Answers on a postcard. Anyway, thank you for joining me. Slightly longer, a bit of an overrun there. But like I say, I seem to have dropped over 18,000 frames. And thank you for sticking with us for this long. Okay, if you want to go over to our Discord server, you can. And One Angry Pagan is going to stream James O'Brien on there. So anyone who's a member of this channel or a patron should be free to go over there and check that out. If you can't get access to the Labour Social Discord, please let me know and I'll sort that out for you. A good way of getting a hold of me is going to my website, grahamdavidhughes.com. There is a contact form there and you can contact me through that after proving that you're not a robot, I think. So anyway, thanks for watching and take care. And until Monday at 9:30, I'll say hello, good evening, welcome, and